I've been following the dispute between Pamew and this douchey little character named Baltimark. With quite a bit of amusement, actually. If you ask me, I think Pamew has owned him from beginning to end. But one thing that fascinates me about it is the fact that Pamew is even attempting to argue with this character. And the reason I say that is because when you examine Baltimark's theology, it becomes quite obvious that this is not a character worth arguing with, because the very nature of his theology automatically makes him reject any argument anybody makes. Baltimark may or may not admit this, but his theology is based almost entirely on this guy, William James, late 19th, early 20th century psychologist and philosopher. In addition to the pragmatist philosophy, which is the book that I just showed you right there, he wrote a lot on religion. One of his most famous essays on religion is called The Will to Believe. And it's exactly what you think it is by the title. It's an attempt to justify believing something because you will it to be true, rather than because you have positive, rational justification for it being true. And he also wrote a lot on so-called religious experience, and tried to use religious experience, as he understood it, to circumvent rational objections to religious belief. I'm an atheist, so of course I think he completely failed in this project of his. But the important part is that understanding Baltimark's theology goes a long way to helping one understand why arguing with him is a waste of time. And he expresses his theology in 3 videos on his YouTube channel called Blessed Fool, The More Blessed Fool, and The Blessedest Fool. Now, I'm not sure if blessedest is a word, and I'm especially suspicious of the fact that in one video he says blessedest, and on the other he says more blessed. If it's more blessed in one video, then it shouldn't be most blessed in the other, and if you're going to say blessedest in one video, then shouldn't you say blesseder in the other? But I mean, that's a minor grammatical point. In his videos, he makes his position pretty clear, and it's because of these videos that I strongly suspect that his theology is a Jamesian theology, maybe with some Schleiermacher or something like that thrown in, but strongly a Jamesian theology. And he's not nearly as philosophical as William James is. William James realized the philosophical difficulties of what I'm going to call religious subjectivism, which is this idea that the truth of religion can be affirmed entirely by subjective experience. So when we have Baltimark saying things like this, "My own daughter said that Daddy was wrong." I mean, yes, that's right. He says, reason is the devil. Now, what is reason? Reason is how humans reach intersubjective agreement. To reason with each other means to provide evidence for each other and rational arguments in order to reach a mutual conclusion. I see reason philosophically as a social thing. It's something that brings humans together. It's a way that we can all come together and reach a conclusion. It's not the only way we can do this, but it's the only reliable way that we can do this. We can all reach conclusions by just blindly following authority. We could all reach a conclusion by just going with our emotions and having a kind of mob mentality. But I think history shows that these forms of reaching mutual social agreement are unreliable and even dangerous sometimes. But reason is a way that we can all reach mutual agreement without relying on these more unreliable aspects of our human nature. To say that it's the devil is to say outright that you reject this form of human belief changing. To say that reason is wrong is to say that you reject a priori the notion that anyone else could present evidence which would change the way you think about the world. So Baltimark claims not to be dogmatic, and he claims this based on the fact that he would be willing to change his beliefs if God prompted him to. Am I dreaming? Am I in a coma? But this is horseshit. Dogmatic does not mean unwilling to change your own beliefs. It means believing without any rational justification and being totally impervious to any rational arguments from anybody else. That's dogmatism. I mean, a dogmatic person could change her beliefs. She could just change to a different dogmatism. So when baltimark says that reason is the devil, then he is actually stating the fact that he believes dogmatically, whether he'll admit that or not. One thing I find interesting about what I'm calling religious subjectivism is that unlike most forms of theology and religious apologetics, it really places its argumentative strategy front. I'm sorry, I have a fly flying around in here. It really places its argumentative strategy front and center. I mean, baltimark again states this explicitly in his video. So you see, by assuming this theological position, this subjectivist, it's all about my own experience in here and nothing else really matters, and reason is the devil and blah 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 blah, it's all about my experience in here, that automatically squashes any objection anyone might make. Now, what religious subjectivists don't like for the rest of us to bring up is the fact that you can do this with fucking anything. And I mean fucking anything. I could say that there's an invisible elephant right here next to me, but only I can see it. And the rest of you just, your minds aren't open enough to the invisible elephant. It's too bad that you're so stupid and so spiritually impoverished that you can't see my invisible elephant. But it's there. I feel it. You know, I think most thinking people would say, well, that's a bunch of bullshit. If you want me to treat your belief in your invisible elephant like it's anything other than your own delusion, then you need to give me something that we can all share together, otherwise known as evidence, which could convince me. Otherwise, you're just being arrogant. You're just saying, well, my mind is special. You know, what's going on in my brain meats here is really, really special compared to whatever goes on in your brain meats. And I get these special visions that you don't get. And so, baltimark says, well, if God prompted me to change my beliefs, I would. And that really amounts to, if whatever's going on in here, this makes me change whatever's going on in here, then I'll change whatever goes on in here. But again, that doesn't excuse you from the charge of dogmatism. In fact, that is still dogmatism. That's still believing just because you want to believe, without any rational justification. And as I said, it's also arrogant. It's an insult to the other people who are trying to have a conversation with you, who are trying to debate, who are trying to reach some sort of mutual social agreement with you. You know, Pamew strikes me as a reasonable guy. It seems to me like he's the kind of guy who could reach a point where he's willing to agree to disagree happily with somebody so long as they're willing to reach that same point with him. But no matter how irrational someone is, when somebody's being utterly arrogant, then there's no way to reach this social agreement. And I consider just an outright rejection of reason to say reason is the devil, and the specific adoption of a subjectivist position which automatically destroys any debate and automatically invalidates whatever other people might say is arrogant. It's bullshit, and it's dogmatic.